think a lot of wellness it's a very personal thing. It's more of a feeling that you get when you're in a space. I mean, we all know how it feels to be in a sterile doctor's office versus being at a spa. There are certain elements included in the space that immediately will make you feel like this is a retreat, this is a sanctuary, a place of, home, peace, relaxation.
Well, glad you could join us this morning. We have a great presentation from two fabulous minds here in Healthy Homes, Happy Buyers, designing homes for wellness and natural living. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment, but I did want to ask, anybody remember COVID? It's the trend of sanctuary, and we did seek sanctuary during COVID to keep ourselves healthy. But there is a downside to that. If the environment we seek sanctuary in isn't healthy, we're just hurting ourselves. So there's a lot of really interesting and new stuff that's happening in that environment, and our presenters today are going to talk about that and more, including not just finishes, but also design of a home and working on design for a healthy environment. So Raquel, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Raquel Deluca. I'm a senior interior designer at Homebound, and we are a national builder. And at Homebound, I curate and lead our design selections process, curate packages, and help create our options program as well for our new developments.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Erin Dalton-Cooney. I run the property management design team at Wayfair Professional. So lead a team of designers, and we are primarily working on model homes and model units across the country. And so I'm here to share with you some of my insight that I've brought from my designers and have a good conversation.
Perfect. So before we jump into kind of looking at some of the specifics, we wanted to walk through some of the trends that we're seeing in wellness and in natural living. And I like to think of these in three different categories. So basically, why are we seeing an impact of wellness on the home space? And where is this coming from? So the first one is consumer demand. So we're really seeing a growing interest in wellness, natural living, and we're seeing this across all different disciplines. So not just in the home space, we're seeing it in our food, in the media we consume. And so it's only natural that we're seeing this come into the home space as well. And people are really looking for more physical, more mental well-being. So we're seeing how homes can really increase that for them. The second one is market shift. So Paul mentioned the pandemic, obviously, but how the pandemic, how environmental awareness and lifestyle changes have really pushed wellness to the forefront. So we're seeing this more as something that consumers care about now than they previously did. And then the last one is what I'm calling lifestyle connection or aesthetic connection. And this is that concept of sanctuary that was touched on a little bit yesterday. But buyers today don't just want a home. They want a sanctuary, something that fosters health, sustainability, and peace. All right, awesome. So let's dig into some of the key elements. What are these trends that we're seeing and kind of how are they created in the home space? So the first one is indoor-outdoor flow. So I know this was touched on a lot yesterday in the Lawn and Order session. By the way, I love the name of that session. Hilarious. So how are we creating indoor-outdoor flow? So one of the big ones is enlarged doors and windows. So how can we increase just views of nature and really feeling like even when we're inside of our homes, we're still seeing the outdoors. We're able to have airflow to the outdoors and feeling that connection to nature. The second one is outdoor living spaces. So again, you guys really delved into this yesterday in the session, so we'll just touch on it today, but just creating living spaces that are functional for us, interior and exterior of our homes. And then the next one is biophilic design. So how can we use natural materials, sustainable materials, and really have this touch and feel of nature? So even when we're inside, we're touching natural materials and we're interacting with natural materials. And I think that's a big part of what Erin will talk on today.
Exactly. I was going to say, too, with the biophilic design, I think sometimes we forget how, like you're saying, even touching that and having that experience of touching the material is beyond just the visual appeal that someone is seeing, but they're actually having that experience and interaction, something as subtle as that.
Yes, totally. And I think that you're getting that also with not only like the physical materials, but also even having the sensory experience of views to the outdoors. So maximizing natural light and maximizing greenery helps you feel like you're in nature even when you are forced to be indoors sometimes. So the next one is light. And really the interesting piece here is looking at how we can feel more connected to the natural systems around us. So the biggest one with like the large windows and doors is how can we regulate our circadian rhythms to the natural world around us, and really kind of sync up with the sun a little bit. So a lot of us spend a lot of time in artificial lighting, especially if you think of like traditional office settings. So it's nice if we can have our homes be a little more connected to the sun. And this can help with our sleep and improve our mental well-being as well. And then kind of on the flip side of natural light, how can we use our artificial lighting to create tunable LED systems that also connect? So can we have our lights dim in the evening and have a warmer tone, and maybe be brighter and mimic daylight more, even on a cloudy day, so it can help you feel more alert?
And also too, I think even in the imagery you're seeing here, right, is you're providing that natural light through how the design is created, and then you're also layering in, right, window treatments, thinking about the experience throughout the day as it changes at any point during the day, which is really key for people to understand that they have that ability to change it, even though ultimately the base layer is set for how much light they're getting within the space.
Exactly. And this could be something like, if you're not a natural early riser, like how can you make your home like shift your circadian rhythms and kind of impact your schedule in a way that feels more aligned with the things you need to do that day? Perfect. So the next one is air quality. I know, especially with the pandemic, there's been a lot of conversation around HVAC systems and air purification. So obviously these are a big element. But then additionally to that, I think a really important topic is just the materials that go into our homes, whether it be the kind of fixtures or even the finishes. And how can we choose things that are not producing VOCs, or low VOC or non-toxic paints, or are just made from more sustainable materials?
I think we've been getting this question a lot too on my side, is really creating sort of the whole experience and safety of feeling that what is in that space generally has an emphasis on the materials themselves, right? Making sure we can't do every single little thing is going to be exactly what we maybe would want, but there's a good amount of that product that doesn't have a concern, and I think that puts people's minds at ease.
Yeah, and also just like the combination of these things. So it doesn't have to necessarily be all, non-toxic or low VOC materials that are going into the home, but in combination with a good air purification system or large windows, so you can have, a good air exchange between indoor and outdoor when you want it. This one, acoustics, I think has become a really big one, and one that I think we can learn a lot from the commercial space. Historically, I think in residential, we've not done a ton for acoustics, but as many of us live in our homes and kind of make our home wear more hats than it used to, we think about how we can carve out privacy, how we can carve out working spaces or relaxation spaces. And sound is a really big one for you to feel like you are in a place of well-being and in a bit of a retreat in your home. So how do we do this? We think about how can we offer options for insulating interior walls. This has been a big one that we get a lot of requests for at Homebound. And then also, how can we look at the kind of furniture and considerations on the interiors that can also help with that sound dampening and absorbing?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about commercial as well. So on my side, we're seeing that. We've done that a lot in office, as you guys can imagine. And then we're bringing it a lot into our short-term rentals and our models, because you think about the spaces like the work from home office, or you think about something that you really want people to feel that sense of privacy. Maybe that's meditation room, the yoga room, and even something as simple as a small addition of acoustic wall tiles on one wall can help. So that can be very minimal, or we can go really big and do, a whole entire interior space.
Yeah, and I think this is a really cool one, because it's one that you can add these products that you're seeing in the space, or it can be something like insulation where it's completely hidden, but something that, really makes a difference for your daily life. So overall, I think we as builders are always thinking about, okay, yes, it's nice to think about wellness, but what is the value to our buyers? And, are they really going to be willing to invest in this long term? So I like to think about the value of wellness as kind of a long game. It's one that you're not going to see like the immediate benefits of, but the first part of this is long-term value. So adding some of these wellness features into the home can ultimately increase the value of your home. Things like a sauna or a cold plunge, or knowing that all the interior walls of your home are insulated, that can be a resale increase in value. And then the second piece is health benefits. So how can we live better in our homes and reduce stress, anxiety, and how can we just feel better every day living in our homes? And I think that ultimately this will build a value of trust and for your brand. So when your buyers have been living in your homes and they're really enjoying the elements and feeling well, I think that this will harken back to the investment that you as a builder have made in offering them these health and wellness options.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's so well put. Exactly what I was thinking as you're going through this is that on the sales side, if you're showing that commitment to these things for your buyers, they're going to feel that. They're going to understand and realize the commitment you're making to them in those small ways or big ways, right? It might vary, but I think it really does say a lot in those decisions.
All right, awesome. So now we're going to get into kind of more practical applications of, okay, we've got these concepts of wellness, we understand the trends, but how can we as building professionals actually integrate these into the options we're offering our buyers, or in some cases in a higher end product, maybe into the base home that you're offering for buyers? And how can we make this kind of come to life? So we're going to look space by space in the home, starting in the bedroom. And here we're really thinking about lighting and window treatments. So how can we support those natural circadian rhythms? Can we have window shades that rise with the sun, or lights that come on in the morning? Or can we create a bedtime routine that helps you settle down at the end of the day? And then again, having these large fenestration to improve air quality, and then thinking about just our air quality systems in general. I know we think about how much time we spend in our homes, and for most of us, the most time we spend in our home is actually asleep. So it's a big portion of our health and wellness, and I think one that builders have an opportunity to carve out a little bit more attention to wellness here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also, I feel like I just read something the other day about just a whole emphasis on sleep hygiene and almost like hacking your sleep hygiene and what that would look like, totally. Which I think people are really leaning into. To see that visually in these types of add-ons or from the start changes within the layout, within the floor plans, it really makes a difference for them. And now I think anyone walking through a home, right, they're going to be thinking about that when they're looking through the space and imagining how that would go for them, what that would look like for them based on what their life is at that time, right? You've got a lot of different scenarios. I know I have a 3-year-old and sleep is rough these days.
Really.
So I'm going to be thinking about that a little bit differently than someone else, right? So I think it makes a huge impact.
So these kinds of things are very interesting and easily to input in, say, the primary bedroom, but in secondary and third bedrooms where younger children might be sleeping, it's a little bit harder to implement that. How do you kind of do that in the secondary and third bedrooms, which builders really don't like to invest in very much?
Right. Well, I think the easiest was window treatments on my side, right? Thinking about how you're layering that in, even if it's simple, even if it's simply making the window treatments really easy and simple for them to see how they would utilize them. I think that's the number one. I think you can get kind of creative in, the way layouts are made or adding things in. Even some of the add-ons to the windows themselves in terms of privacy. I think that can be a really easy, quick way, especially in models, especially when budgets are tight, right? To give that aesthetic, but not having to make any major investment.
But so you did mention also in the layout, what's an example of maybe how you would adjust in the layout to provide increased wellness for good sleep for those second and third bedrooms?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in second and third bedrooms, I would say, I think visual placement of the bed and what individuals are seeing when they're actually looking at the bed and what they're seeing when they're there. I think that is helpful, how that would look. I also think too, I don't want to say like mobile furniture, but I think things that can be moved around that they could see and have placement for different, not even activities, but how they're utilized in the space, so they could move pieces around. I think that could also be helpful as well.
Yeah, and there's also I'm just thinking more of like the kind of built-in elements of the home. We've seen a lot of really cool and interesting products these past few days, but I think there's an opportunity to allow buyers to have like a more modular system for things like lighting. So maybe like you don't always want to have smart lighting in a kid's bedroom, but if you're having trouble with your 3-year-old getting to sleep, then maybe there's a way to, for a certain period of time, create a system that is smart in that room. And maybe you only need it for a year or two, and then you decide, you want to move it to a different area of the home. So I think with the new technologies now, there's a lot more customization that buyers can make on their own. And if we do our job with setting them up with the tools to be able to kind of customize it to their lifestyles, I think it can help carve out more opportunities for that smart home. Whether it's in the window treatments, those can automatically rise and lower, or in our lighting, or maybe even in our sound systems. Can we play lullabies at night? Yes. And create a more nurturing environment for sleep.
Got to play by the rules, everybody.
Hello. No, I'm so big on this sleep topic because, as Raquel said, if you actually look, the Bureau of Labor Statistics does this American time use study. The number one thing people spend time on at home is sleep. Number 2 is watching TV, by the way. But and there's a whole sleep industry out there. So I'm just curious whether anybody's built options assortments around the theme of sleep. And do you have a set of discovery questions as you're working through options that are around sleep? Because it is one of the huge health factors. And there are a lot of things we can do to support sleep, but I just don't know whether we're on the train or not. So is anybody out there building assortments around this? Nancy, hold on.
You got to get the mic.
Good morning. So one of the things I went to an event about a year and a half ago at Faucets and Fixtures, which you think you're going to go see plumbing and all of that. And there's a bed in their studio, in their retail store, actually. Couldn't figure out what the bed was for. And it ends up that actually the mattresses that are made outside of the United States are not good for you. Not good at all, because they get to do all the VOCs. They get to add all the sickness. And there was 2 or 3 people on the panel that were ill, and it ended up being from their mattress. So I'm thinking, wow, I spent all that money on my heavenly mattress and just loved it. And now I have a mattress that was made in the United States, actually in Orange, California. And my designers that are outside the home building side, they are all working on packages that are for the bedrooms. The other area that you guys should look at is living walls to bring in the oxygen in the room. That was another area that was taught to me. This was all new to me. So just letting you know. So John, my outside designers are doing that, but I don't think it's gotten to the builder level just yet.
Super interesting. The living walls, I feel like, is one that, again, we can learn from commercial. Exactly. Where office spaces, gyms, spas have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, it's even, you probably have seen there's even services where their entire model is they're taking care of the living walls in commercial spaces, right? They're going to multiple properties, they're taking care of the walls themselves. So it's a really easy experience because there is, some upkeep there depending on the system you're utilizing. So it might be pretty self-sufficient, but switching out and pruning and all of that. Totally. But it does, it makes such an effect on anyone who's in the space. It has such an impact visually too. Really, you can feel that the moment you go into a space. But I love the idea that can translate elsewhere. You can definitely do it on a small scale. I think in some of the, even just some of the products that can give you that mini wall experience or that framed experience multiple times over. I also love moss. I think that visually it gets a little bit more. It's not going to give you, I think, the emphasis on what's going on in the air quality, but it does give you the feeling of what they would be looking for, tied in with other things as well.
We have another comment here.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I was just going to mention, I do resiliency in the homes, batteries, generators, solar, and all of that. And one of the things that has become really interesting over the past decade, I've seen a really pretty dramatic shift to when I'm saying, what is essential load for you. sleep apnea machines are like 50% of the time it's the first thing out of the wife's mouth. He has to have a sleep apnea machine. So
I'm laughing because my husband has sleep apnea and it's like his pacifier. He loves that thing.
Well, I listened to a podcast a couple of years ago with an evolutionary biologist, and so maybe I'll turn this thing upside down a little bit, who said that evolutionarily, we don't need 8 hours of sleep. That's big sleep industry telling you that. And there is but what we do need is 8 hours total. But the idea of sleeping for 8 hours straight is not necessarily that we have necessarily something that we have need. There are entire cultures where they wake up in the middle of the night and have things going on in the middle of the night, whether it's a family gathering or other, and then go back to sleep. And I mention that because I don't know how many people here wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then all of a sudden you're awake and you can't get back to sleep. And there is a grace to give yourself if that's just a natural thing, instead of beating yourself up over the fact that, hey, wait, I'm supposed to be sleeping 8 hours straight. But maybe I don't want to change the entire world. I left my panelists speechless.
Well, I do.
Melatonin.
I may have upended the entire panel.
Oh, no.
discussion.
Well, I think you might have. Someone in the audience is going to wake up at 3 a.m. and they're going to think of you, Paul.
I will take that gladly.
That was very common back in like the medieval days. They would do like the midnight meal. So maybe we can see a resurgence with it and see how our tech can kind of facilitate it.
So now we'll have cookware in the bedroom.
So the next one we have here, more on furniture finishes, is thinking about the color palettes found in nature, providing that visual tie, which we've kind of touched on a few times here, but really layering that in multiple places. So you're thinking about the linens, you're thinking about the furniture itself, the rugs, thinking about the decor and accessories. So all of that plays in visually. Even something as simple as like the organic shapes that are tying that tie to nature. And kind of like what I mentioned yesterday in the indoor-outdoor connection as well, if we see that seamless transition throughout the home in subtle ways, it creates that visual tie and connection. It feels natural, right, as you're moving throughout the space. The other thing here, and I'll talk about this a little in the end, is the consideration of the material content, which we've been touching on, where that product's coming from, what is making up that product. Anything we need to be concerned about. There's a lot of certifications and things now that give us some understanding of what the product looks like, what it's going to be doing, and it's going to give us at least some comfort there, right? It's not going to address everything, but it gives us maybe that added layer of understanding, and that can be passed down, of course, informationally to the buyers.
Yeah, and I think some of this can also be applied. I know we're speaking kind of more about like furnishings right now, but I think a lot of this can also be applied to like even like the color we choose to paint a room in a model home. Like how can we make this a holistic experience where all these pieces are kind of nodding back to nature and we're feeling that flow and connection as we walk through different spaces in the home.
We even find it too, we'll do, the large murals that have visual depth, right? Even creating that as we see in nature, as we look out the window. Creating that even simply in like a one wall is going to create even a size perception difference.
When I landed on the plane from Boston to Orlando, there was like, I don't know if anybody else passed this in the airport, but there was a giant TV wall of just the ocean and the waves crashing inside of the airport. And I thought, oh, wow, this is like a super interesting way to make you feel like you're outside, even though you're stuck inside of an airport. So I think on a less commercial scale, there are ways that we can kind of incorporate that into our homes.
Would that replace, say, just kind of, as you mentioned earlier, this breakdown between the indoor-outdoor? We talked about it yesterday, the necessity of having windows. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that even people in hospitals get better quicker if they have a view of nature than if they're just kind of stuck in four walls.
I don't know if it would replace it, but I think about spaces like, I live in New England, so we do a lot of basements in New England, and like there's a lot of places where we can't necessarily carve out windows or natural light. So how can we still create that connection to nature in spaces that are either interior of the home, or if we have really tight setbacks between single family, can we find ways to kind of make those moments of nature still happen when it's not possible to really have the real thing?
Yeah, I think it adds that touch. It adds the feeling, right? Just that extra couple percent, what that means, right? So It's the depth in the photography. It's the depth in maybe the wallpapers. It's even the mirror placement to gather additional lighting, right? It's all thinking about that and how that works within. It's going to give just that extra sense, I think, which doesn't hurt, right? It helps a little if we can't do it fully.
All right, perfect. So we've talked about sleep. Now we're gonna switch gears and talk about how we can stay alert, how we can stay focused, and looking into the home office. So this is one of our Texas homes. And I think this home has done a really good job of showing how we can maximize views to the outdoors while we're working, and really be mindful of our window placement in an office. So we're really trying to reduce eye strain. We're trying to create clarity and mental alertness during our workday. Again, something I think that we can learn a lot from commercial, but yet we don't want to have, fluorescent lights overhead in our home office. So how can we do this in a way that more caters to a residential environment? And then the last piece is awareness of our backgrounds. So a lot of us work from home, and when we are working from home, we don't want to have chaos going on in the background while we're on our calls. So how can we create a space that really eases that work from home functionality and allows a buyer to just say, oh, perfect, I could just plop my antique desk here in this room and it's a perfect home office, and call it a day.
I love that. We talk a lot about this sort of feeling of the work background, right? And of course we have sometimes those filters you can put on and whatever. It doesn't do the same thing, I think. But what I think the great call out here is, right, I'm looking at this, someone's looking at this and they're like, okay, good. No one, if there's like 3 people in my house walking around, no one's going to know or see, right? It's not going to disrupt what I'm doing. It's not going to disrupt workflow. And it kind of takes that edge off, right? It keeps your focus continuing. So something just as simple as that is going to make a huge difference potentially throughout your day. And so the next one here in terms of home office, and I did want to mention, so I actually pulled this imagery from our new Muse from Wayfair. If you guys want to try it, check it out. It is actually our new AI program that gives us some really strong inspirational imagery. So this is something we've been using with our customers to really just help them get on the same page in terms of conceptual imagery. It helps kind of make sure we're understanding where we're at with them. But here what we're tying in is really the ergonomic features and the task seating and the work surfaces. So you'll see here, right, it's not just the up and down of the chair, right? It's thinking about the seat depth, the potentially, not this one, but something in terms of the armrest movement. So all of those little things in terms of the user while they're working from home. It's the height adjustability of desks. It's thinking about how everyone is working, not just for those 2 hours. It's if they're there throughout the day and what that difference makes. Consideration of materials, so that aids in acoustics like we mentioned before. So thinking about how we can place that throughout, thinking about layering in product that's going to help with the acoustics, and then general comfort. So I think many of us have experienced this. Just like you would be in an office, right? You have these things that are added in, and that should be also reflected in the home office as well, and understanding how that could play into your workday. Lastly is personalization and biophilic elements. So even something as simple as, that art piece you drew 5 years ago and it's a hobby that you love and you have it framed on the wall, like that's going to feel really great. So seeing that throughout the day, having those ties, really getting away from that sterile aesthetic is going to help the user. So how we do that in models is we get really, we get unique in the way we're tying it to maybe the area the individuals are living in, or thinking about what they would be doing outside of this home. And so doing that visually in places like the home office, it's so stimulating, it's getting people thinking not just about what they're doing throughout the space, but it has those visual breaks that people need throughout the day, right? You need to have that jumping out of what you're doing and resetting and coming back. So a couple things there you might see, but it definitely helps overall.
Yeah, and I feel like it's like we're seeing this theme of like work-life balance, and I love that concept of having like a personalized piece that you can kind of incorporate into the space.
Can I soapbox a little bit on
You
this
sure
one?
can.
Because I mean, this is a critical battleground for winning sales for your homes. There's sleep, there's watching TV, and then there's like we haven't seen the new studies that look at the amount of time people are spending working from home. Regardless of back to office trends, there's still a ton of hybrid out there. There are a ton of people working from home, and they're spending a lot of time here. So the way that they're talking about this in terms of the design and alertness and bringing workplace ergonomic concepts home is the way you all need to be talking about it too. If your default position on work from home is get an extra bedroom and figure it out yourself, you're really missing the opportunity. And this is another one where you need to fully merchandise the concept, because room design by itself, without the furniture, without thinking through the technology infrastructure that goes with it, isn't enough. So I think we all have a lot of work to do. The sort of things that you're talking about, we need to have fluency, in the design center, and you will win. This is a room that can win the sale for you. It can win a sale versus a used home, can win a sale versus the builder that says, get another bedroom.
That's a great point, John. And one of my questions here that I wanted to ask the panelists, and thanks for teeing me up. We've been talking about from the very beginning about the difficulty of dealing with skeptical consumers and communicating and building trust, discussing how you communicate value to price conscious people. And healthy home is a value add, and we've talked about that as a value add. What is the point of entry for a salesperson to raise that question with somebody walking through the house? Is it sound? Is it clean air? Is it, a home office, as John suggests? How do I broach that topic to get into the discussion about a healthy home with a home buyer so that I can then communicate the increased value of that proposition?
Yeah, I can add it. Go ahead, I'll add it.
I think it's like for a salesperson, I think it's really like their job to do some listening and a little bit of just like information gathering when they're first connecting with a potential buyer. If someone's coming in with a bunch of kids, like immediately I'm going to think about acoustics and how we can, create retreat for someone. Or if somebody is, they're having trouble sleeping or they struggle with being able to relax, then maybe we're looking into those systems in the home that can create those patterns for them. So I do think it's so much important for salespeople to be kind of absorbing the needs of their clients in order to like attune the features of the home that matters to them. Wellness is something that obviously we all need to sleep. Obviously we all need to work. And I think it depends on what you're seeking in your home. So really trying to carve out how can we make this feel more customized to each client's needs.
I think that's spot on. I was going to say that similar to our project kickoff calls, right? I'm thinking about just like that salesperson is having a conversation with that buyer, understanding a little bit about their life, and there's going to be something that ties into their life, right? It's going to connect in some dynamic. Even if it's something as simple as an activity that someone likes to do, right? They're going to need a space potentially for that, or they're going to maybe they know there's going to be multi-generational family and someone, there's someone in the home and there's a bunch of kids, they're going to need a space to go, right? So there's things like that layer in that they can hear and understand and create those connections too.
I think this is a great opportunity for the salesperson to establish an expertise also,
Yes.
to help educate clients on these needs. And if you can establish that expertise and build the trust, that you much better off.
But really like arming them with the materials and information that they need in an easy way so they can pull that out and have those conversation speaking points, I think can only help. And it like continues to build that trust.
Yeah, and another thing too is like when we're thinking about how we design our plans or how we, outfit our models, I think like maintaining flexibility to be able to allow buyers to make decisions that are, in line with their wellness needs is really important. So creating a product that is flexible enough that, you may not care about a sauna, but for me, it's like, it's a dream come true to have a sauna in my home. So like different things can be selling points, but if we design a home that, can facilitate having a sauna or can facilitate having, a really amazing home office, for somebody that's going to be a selling point. And for someone else, they're going to say, no, I want to use that as a craft room or a playroom.
Anything to block the noise of a gas-powered leaf blower. The landscaper next door while I'm on a Zoom call.
We can go back to the acoustics.
That would be the thing I would value most highly.
I just have a question, like this whole health and wellness area. These are different types of conversations than we typically have about finishes, which is like, hey, what colors do you like? What styles do you like? They're kind of invasive, you know? It's a much more intimate conversation when you're asking somebody about their mental well-being, health. So I just don't know whether we've got the language, the rubric to have the discussion to really discover, you know, the needs and wants and make the alignment, and whether that's, you know, a challenge that we need to work on as an industry.
It's funny you say that, because I meet with a lot of buyers in person or on Zoom, and it's amazing the things people tell you when you get in the room with them. I think we're not designing commercial spaces. We're designing residential spaces. We're designing where people will sleep and where they will shower, and, you know, where they're kind of having their most intimate moments. So ultimately, people do end up kind of like divulging a lot of information to you, whether you want to hear it or not. You know, you do kind of, I think, designers or salespeople have a lot of information just kind of given to them. Because I think a lot of buyers, they want their home to cater to their lifestyle. So I think in this scenario, they're more willing to just kind of like give you the information rather than you having to probe for, hey, are you sleeping? Because I think that obviously could be quite invasive.
Well, I think that's a good call out, John, though, on coaching individuals for, at base level, talking to people and listening to them, right? And like setting the stage and allowing them a lot of space to tell them what they need, even if it's as simple as, tell me how you would utilize this space, or tell me what you envision for your best, absolute best scenario of your future home, and like opening the floor with them and what that would look like and what's going to come out of that. Because I think there's probably a few words, keywords, subjects, whatever, that someone can touch on that's going to really build into that conversation at a very, very base level.
Yeah, amazing. And also, I think one of the questions I love to ask our clients is, what's not working for you in your home right now? And that will usually crack open a whole can of worms on what's not flowing for them in their home, or what they're seeking in a new home.
There's a model for this that I think home builders could learn from, and that is from high-end remodeling contractors who walk into people's houses and have to restructure those houses for their new lifestyle. And it's a very intimate conversation, and you're doing it inside that person's existing house. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to go on YouTube and listen to people talking about this. A lot of them use the Sandler to sales method to go through a discovery process about how to change the model, change their home to match their new lifestyle, and find out what those intimate details are. And the very best of them are just practically psychologists. They're brilliant at it. And there's a lot that I think home builder sales staff can learn from just watching that process.
One other just spot to touch on in the home office is what we call the pocket office at Homebound. So this is one of our plans where we've not only created a more formal office space, but we're also carving out a kind of petite little workspace behind the kitchen, and just really allowing for multiple workspaces to maximize flexibility for family life. So if you have multiple people working from home, if you need a home workspace, or you just want somewhere to put your mail and your bills that is hidden, that you can close behind a door and doesn't create visual clutter for you in your everyday life. And then connecting to this, we're going to talk a little bit about the great room. So in the great room of the home, again, we're trying to maximize our outdoor views. So really to create that indoor-outdoor feel. And when we're thinking about how we furnish or how we lay out the great room, we're focused on, I know we spent a lot of time talking about how we work in our homes, and now we're kind of thinking about more how we live in our homes. Can we create large gathering areas that are good for connection, good for entertaining? So that way, you know, we can go from our long commute from our home office into our great room and feel like we're in a different space and feel like we can kind of turn off our brain from the workday and find time for connection and gathering.
And I think too, something we see a lot that almost kind of is a miss sometimes is really making sure we're having enough seating. Right? Like making sure everyone knows they can actually utilize this space and doesn't feel like, oh, this isn't going to be adequate for my life or my family or whatever dynamic that looks like. And it's not that last minute add, right? It's making sure it's really functional, and that function throughout the space should tie really well with the other spaces that are adjacent to it.
Yes. And I think this is a big one that, we can show buyers in our model homes, how they would live in this space. And like, if they have a few family members coming with them or friends coming with them to tour the model, just having that selection of seating and ability for connection and views throughout the space. Another thing too, I think this was touched on a bit yesterday in the outdoor living section, but just thinking about our materials, how we can blend them a little bit from interior and exterior. So I like this example because we have a simple concrete slab on the outside patio of the home, which I think is a base condition for a lot of us in our homes. But we're pairing it with a lighter wood tone floor. So although these materials are not the exact same, we are kind of getting that visual flow from interior to exterior in a very simple way. So there's not something that's really, delineating from the interior to the exterior. And then again, we're getting a lot of windows here and a lot of glass. So when you're inside this space, you're feeling the views to the outside.
Yeah, that visual tie is really strong.
Yeah. And then a last one I think we're just going to touch a little bit on is we're definitely seeing a shift from gas to electric and how this can promote indoor air quality improvements in that great room and gathering space.
So this one I touched on a little bit, but maximizing the seating aligned with the size of the home. Also thinking about, we didn't really touch on this fully, but having a space for social interaction, right? That also, just that layer of knowing you have space to interact, have conversation, that in itself, right, is that layer of health and wellness and rounding out our day and knowing what that looks like in our interactions throughout our life and keeping those key connections. So even something simple as that is going to help that tie mentally. And then visual indicators of aesthetic materiality and comfort. So also kind of tying in for what we talked about before, but keeping that aesthetic tied throughout all of the furnishings, making sure they're connected, bringing in those biophilic elements. It doesn't just need to be a plant, right? It can be something like the actual material of the bowls we see here. It's creating the multiple textures. We're layering in a bunch of different textures here, which is really reflective of the outdoor environment. And we're doing that in an interior way.
And then thinking about from the great room, how we can transition into those outdoor spaces. We learned a ton yesterday on outdoor living and kind of the features and elements we can include here. But just really thinking about carving out these spaces for our buyers and how can we show them in a model space, oh, wow, I could come out and enjoy, a coffee in the morning on this patio and let people really envision their life in the home.
Is there a way that for a home buyer coming into a home to kind of walk through the front door and have some kind of visual clue or something that kind of says, all right, this is a healthy home, this is a good environment, this is a place I could live in? It seems a lot of this stuff, the visual clues are very subtle because they're really well designed. It's just part of good design. But is there something you could do to kind of signal from the very beginning that somebody walks into a model that this is a good environment?
I mean, I don't know if there's like a sign or anything that we would put up.
Other than signage.
But I think it's about how you feel. I think a lot of wellness it's a very personal thing, and it's more of a feeling that you get when you're in a space. I mean, we all know how it feels to be in a sterile doctor's office versus being at a spa. There are certain elements included in the space that immediately will make you feel like this is a retreat, this is a sanctuary, a place of, home, peace, relaxation. And then again, I think it's up to our salespeople to really be just like probing and having those conversations and highlighting the elements of the home that cater to the buyer's wellness.
I think in the same vein, starting literally at the entry and the foyer and making sure that is done really well right away, right? The first thing that they're seeing, right, as they're walking into the space. I think if that's ignored, it's going to take a little while as they're going throughout the space. And that's going to just get them, it's going to hook them right from the start and help create that moving through. So just like you said, good design, of course. But I think that there's ways to make sure that's layered in correctly right at the start that ties with everything else.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's an interesting question as to whether health and wellness is an above the fold sort of thing to promote at this point. That's an old used to be newspapers. And above the fold is the prominent stuff, right? Like I've been ranting about the fact that D.R. Horton has smart home as the only thing at the top of their nav bar that's feature oriented after 35 years of trying to get builders to do technology. But like, are we burying the lead on health and wellness in homes and not really giving it the prominence, whether that's visually at the model, but even in the digital marketing and other stuff that we're doing for homes? I don't know what the answer is on it, but it's an interesting question.
I think the model is to some extent, and this is why I asked the question about the entry level to talk about health and healthy environments. The model is when green and sustainability really came up, the only entry point to talk about that was energy efficiency. And everybody just went into energy efficiency. That opened up the discussion to a larger issue of sustainability, and now resilience as well. I think that's the thing you put at the top. And I think that it is a potential to differentiate. Our homes are quieter, or our homes have more natural light. That kind of thing gives you that entry point, is where I would go. But I'm not a home builder, and I don't sell homes. So
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah. I had a question right here, yes.
Thank you. On that note, just a piece of advice. There's a concept of real estate wellness that is out there. You could just tag along to that one. If you're trying to put wellness into your homes, how you're building it, you can just use that tagline, real estate wellness. First of all, it's searchable on Google. It's an actual thing. And people will relate to it, because it's essentially, how do you make your buildings, both residential and commercial, promote that wellness? How does that work for you in increasing your health?
And on the commercial side, there are a lot of architects who have the WELL certification. You don't see that as much on the residential side, but that's also a signifier to people that, oh wait, this designer is educated in this particular area.
Yeah, and I think as we see more of this come to the forefront, like there may be other types of residential certifications and things that come up that would be able to signify to buyers that, we're focused on your well-being and we're focused on how you can be healthy in your home. So the next space we're chatting through is the flex room. And flex room in its names they're very flexible. So we're looking for how these can be used for multidisciplinary functions. And really thinking about how we can prioritize flexibility in the layouts, in the space planning. Can we include optional doors? Can we include windows in places that will not inhibit furniture placement? So that way this room can be everything that you want it to be, which I think for many of us, it can wear a lot of different hats.
And on our side in the models, we're doing a lot of things that are very creative focused, even down to like having teen craft rooms or maker spaces within a model. It really, it's very specific, but it really kind of opens up the idea to the buyer of what they can do or how they can have their kids entertained. And then also in wellness and physical activities. So meditation rooms, yoga rooms, spaces where one can disconnect, in contrast to the focus environments like the office spaces. It's solidifying that importance of well-being and mental health for visually. And then it's allowing for modified layouts and potential change. So knowing that, nothing in here is super fixed. It's all, it can be changed. It can be moved around. It can grow with age, right? It can grow with time. And I think giving individuals that sense is super important.
I love that. Just thinking about how it can evolve.
Exactly.
Because I think we go through many phases in our homes, and sometimes there are those more rigid spaces. So it's nice to be offering a flex that can really vary with them as they need it. And then the last space we're touching on is the primary bathroom. So something I like to think about here is that, like, for a long time, gyms and spas have done a lot to get us out of our homes. So like, why do we leave our home to go to a spa? Or why do we leave our home to go to a community gym? And some of this is the environment that they create to be able to kind of get away and have this little bit of retreat. So we're thinking about features that we can include as options in our primary bath to create this home spa environment. So can we include a sauna? Can we include a cold plunge? Can we include a steam shower? Now, I know a lot of these are not things that we would, include in our base home, but are they options for the buyer that is passionate about these elements of wellness to be able to incorporate in their dream bathroom so that they can feel like they're getting away and they can feel like their home is a restful place for them to unplug?
So one thing I did want to touch on with the group, I know we're running up a little bit on time, is that similar to our conversation earlier about the product, the materials that are going to the space, this I think plays out really strongly when you do have a purchasable model. But when you have an assortment, we're calling it, creating an assortment with intent. When those actual pieces have certifications or qualities within them that signifies to the buyer that they are leaning on a more natural or health focus, that in itself is going to be very, I think, strongly digested. And making sure the sales individuals are understanding what those things are, I think can have a huge impact. We're seeing that across our side. Oh, sorry, I can do that. Thank you. And so what a few of those are, and many of you are familiar with this, but you have the Green Guard certified product. We have the Energy Star certified certifications, fair trade, non-toxic, sustainable wood. There's a lot of things here, right? But what I like to highlight across our site is that when you go on our site, you can actually filter for product by those certifications. It's on our Shop Sustainably site, and we actually do have a wide range of product that works within those certifications. So if that's something that's specifically important, maybe on a very specific level, you could easily find that here. And then also when creating a full assortment for a model, and maybe it is something we're having people purchase out of a model, they could know that the majority of that assortment has these certifications that are very clearly delineated when the conversation is going on with the individuals. So you see here, it's really specific in the specifications within the page, very clear, easy to see. Questions?
We have a couple of minutes for questions if anybody would like to get a little more information. John's got a question.
Hello. Hi. Can we go back to the slide with all the little icons? I think one of the y'all presented this in Pasadena when I was moderating, but like they've done and you've got a whole longer list of these, right?
Yes, this is just a snapshot. There actually, if it's Shop Sustainably on Wayfair, it gives the whole list, and then you basically go you click in. I've just learned about this on my tech side. It's actually, you click in and it's this very curated assortment. So as you guys know, there's millions of products on our website, but this gives you a very tunnel vision view of those specific products which have these certifications, which I find super helpful as a designer as well, because sifting through that and trying to understand that is really difficult.
Well, and I think the other thing is you guys are a consumer-facing company. So when you take these certifications, a lot of times in the building industry, you have certifications, they don't really explain themselves, and like there's some assumption that people understand but they've done all of the work to consumerize these messages, to think through what the sell points are around these health and wellness and natural certification stuff. So they kind of done the work for y'all, and that's cool, right? And
yes,
I just think that's
tap into it. I think that's the call out. I think it's call it, right? Like lean on what we've put out there. Because it's helpful, right? And it's all in one place, which I think sometimes is really hard to get a lot of that in one place even for you guys, right? As you're looking through it or potentially looking through it. So yeah, please check it out. I find it very helpful. I tap into it all the time.
Yeah, and another thing, I feel like I learned this when we were prepping for our session, but I know like Wayfair carries a lot of the more like flooring products, cabinetry products, and like I feel like this is a really helpful tool for us to be able to understand, even if we're maybe not necessarily sourcing it through Wayfair, but or we're thinking of Wayfair more as like a furnishing perspective, there's a lot we can learn about just the products we're already putting into our buyers' homes, to be able to see if they have some of these certifications, or maybe there's a product we could swap to that would be more aligned with their wellness.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Pat actually spoke yesterday on this in terms of our reno categories. I think people don't really have any insight into that because they're seeing a lot of times like the Wayfair commercials on TV, but we really have a strong presence there, and it's similar to how I meet people and they're like, wait, what do you do? What do you do at Wayfair? So I always love to kind of really give people insight into all these layers and resources we have that you guys can tap into as well.
Yeah, so there's the stuff of the wellness and natural, then there's the branding and the messaging around it, and you need to get the whole thing working to make the connection to the buyer, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Key.
I actually don't have a question, but I just wanted to emphasize, I love how y'all included the mental health, which always has a stigma about it. Because you said it, and you were like, how do you present it? But I will say, my favorite wellness resorts are the ones that focus on happiness and include not just, a sound bath and a workout and a hike, but the ones that are like, there's a joyful dance class and you just pick your favorite song and you dance to it. Or that includes, like you were saying, a maker's teen room for your loft. The ones that include, we're going to naturally dye a silk scarf or make our own journal and then do a gratitude journal. So I do think, like, just by asking, like, what makes you happy in your home could help with that part of wellness, which is so big.
I love that.
And I think new and what really everybody's looking for now.
Thank you very much. That's a great comment. Appreciate that. And thank you all for being here this morning. And Raquel and Erin, thank you very much for a great presentation. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, all.